I want to thank fabulous rabbinic assistant and good friend Yeshaya for reintroducing me to the thought of Alfred North Whitehead. Maybe he'd be the third great modern philosopher in addition to Kant and Hegel. And this was a man who was a great mathematician, I think, who by the 1920s he might have actually joined the logical positivists, but he took a dramatically different turn. And in reading him and reading about him, he seems to be one of those people that just has some perhaps genetic quality where he experiences the universe in a somewhat mystical way. Meaning when he goes down into the depths of physics, when he studies relativity and quantum theory, he comes out and says, the universe is conscious. This is not by accident. There's some design working itself out. Now, this goes back to Hegel as well. I mean, Hegel wrote that the world is thought working itself out, and reality, physical reality, is a product of the absolute, of some kind of thing. We'll call it the divine, although Hegel's understanding of God is certainly not anything like a traditional one. Now, try to imagine this. One version is the universe is dead. It's just physics and chemistry. The other one, there's something alive, and we are a product of that which is alive. Now, one can say this is just superstitions of a feeble mind, but I don't think George Hegel could be accused of having a feeble mind, and especially not Alfred North Whitehead. I mean, he's a scientist, a mathematician, a physicist of profound reputation, and his conclusion was physics only describes a certain stratum of reality. Whitehead thought about this so deeply that he began to be interested in philosophy. He wanted to write metaphysics. And within a couple of years, he had transformed himself so greatly that Harvard offered him a position as a professor of philosophy at Harvard with no academic training in philosophy whatsoever. Completely self-taught, came up with a philosophy, people read it, and they realized this man has hit new ground. He's taken the tradition from Plato to Kant to Hegel. Someone sidesteps the Aristotelian point of view of breaking the world down into its components and come up with an idea that our somewhat atomistic version of reality is somehow profoundly wrong. Now let me discuss that in the human condition. I think it's very natural in our subjective state that we feel ourselves as private subjects, autonomous individuals. But the more you look at developmental psychology, we realize that we can't even be human without the experience of the other. Okay? Probably most dramatically, those who raise us. But just think about the acquisition of language. You could put a child down in front of a television and assume that they'll absorb language. They won't. If you want your child to learn another language, you say, well, I'll just turn on Korean television and leave my kid in front of Korean TV for a couple of years and they'll come out speaking Korean. They won't know a word of Korean. So language comes from actual interaction, at least one's first language. Now maybe you can infer a second language from watching television and subtitles, but your first language comes from the intersubjectivity between two human beings, and that is just one part of it. The most profound experience we seem to have as human beings is the experience of love. Now, this could be, people could hear this and say, well, that's just a 19th century romanticism. I really mean it in a deeply fundamental way. That somehow for the human being to be a whole human being has to experience some stability of love in intersubjectivity, or you won't actually be a full human being. Maybe you can achieve this later with lots of help and a good spiritual guide, a good psychologist or somebody who really understands the depth of the human condition. But we are not atomistic individuals. We're relational individuals. And by our nature, I think the deepest thing that we seek is love, which means an intersubjectivity where one's being as a human being is ultimately affirmed, celebrated, that you're deeply seen as a human being. Now, of course, love can go into the erotic dimension, but eros is only a tiny part of what we mean by the human experience of love. So try to imagine from our human experience that we are not individuals, we are relational, And even our sense of individuality is established by our intersubjectivity.
Shalom, 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 tova uveracha. Shalom, 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 tova uveracha. Ay 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 ay. Ay 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 ay. Shalom, shalom.